presentation, which is Coastal Butterflies of Georgia. And the butterfly here on the front page is the Gulf fritillary, one of our most common species of butterflies. And here it is nectaring on blazing star, Liatris, one of the Liatris species. So I'll be talking about this species of butterfly along with other ones as well. Go to the next page here. Okay, first of all, I wanted to kind of dedicate my presentation to one of my favorite women on the coast, which is Krista Hayes. A lot of you may know her very well. She's one of the founders of Coastal Wildscapes, along with Linda Lamb, who is also a great butterfly enthusiast as well. So both ladies have taught me so much. And really, when Coastal Wildscapes asked me to do this presentation, first thing I did was talk to Krista. I'm like, Krista, can I bounce some ideas off of you? What do you think? Which species should I pick? Because there's just so many beautiful, wonderful butterfly species to pick from here on the coast. So she really, gave her expertise, guidance, and I just really enjoyed learning from her over all these years that I have known her. So she's a wonderful friend as well. I was lucky enough to spend Earth Day with her this year. We went out to Cay Creek, and this is one of the pictures I took of her on the left here. Doing what she does best, photographing, wildflowers and also butterflies. And she also contributed a lot of the photographs for this presentation. So even maybe 50% of those photographs came from her. So whatever I didn't have, I'm like, Krista, do you have this and that and things like that. So she was just really great in offering her photographs and kind of the species to focus on here on the coast. So many thanks to her. So what my plans are for this presentation is I would like to cover butterfly biodiversity here on the coast, why butterflies are important, butterfly gardening. That's something that kind of was a fad, and now we've kind of moved beyond the butterfly gardening, but we'll talk still about things that you can do in your yard to help butterflies. And then focus on a little bit on fall butterfly migration. It's just not for monarchs. There are other species as well, so we'll go over those, looking at those migratory butterfly species. And then we'll get into some of the common coastal butterflies, ones that most of them are pretty common. Some of them are a little bit rare, but very specific to our coast here in Southeast Georgia. So after that, because we are Coastal Wildscapes and we love native plants and planting natives to support our wildlife, I want to go over 10 important fall nectar plants. So this is based on research that has been done over the last couple of years onto what species are these migratory butterflies using, as they travel down the coast. And then I want to talk about our iNaturalist event. It's coming up in October. So I'll actually show you how to get into iNaturalist, set up an account, where to find our project, how to join, how to submit things. It's a really wonderful resource, and it's really great because you act as kind of like a citizen scientist, and you contribute to research in that respect. And you can also, get to know some of our other members as well, by doing that. And then I want to go over just some of the coastal butterfly and native plant resources that we have on our website. So I'll probably talk about that first before I go into the iNaturalist event, just to kind of show you how to go onto our website, where to find those resources, some of the things that I'll be talking about today. So kind of the goal of the presentation is just to educate about our beautiful butterfly species and kind of share my passion for butterflies and wild things like butterflies and native plants, and then also give you ways that you can help butterflies in your yard, and then also how you can help to participate in our pollinator event coming up in October. So two of my favorite species, it's hard to pick just one, but most people know the monarch, which is the species that's up on the top left there. The one on the bottom is a monarch relative, kind of like a cousin. It's the queen butterfly. So that is one that is specific to our coastal areas, salt marshes and things like that. Very beautiful as well, a little bit darker with spots. So we'll get into those species along with other ones. but there are about 20,000 butterfly species worldwide, 750 in North America, north of Mexico. Here in Georgia, there's about 172, and then in coastal Georgia, we have about 116. So quite a few species here to learn. It would be great one day to, I guess, see them all, right? So hopefully you'll learn just a little bit about, you know, a variety of them today. So first I want to talk about, why do butterflies matter? You know, we all know they're absolutely beautiful, but what is their importance in nature? Do they have any economic value? You know, what is their ecosystem value? So I wanted to just talk about a couple of these different topics. The butterfly here is the skipper, which in this presentation, I'm mostly covering butterflies, but I will cover the most common skipper, which is the long-tailed skipper. This one is not. This is the silver-spotted skipper. It's on nectaring on ironweed here. Another skipper that's fairly easy to recognize. Most of them are brown, inconspicuous, and very small and hard to identify. So I just left it with the largest one and pretty much the most beautiful one. So we'll talk about that one later. But intrinsically, if you think about insects and you know how insects rule the world, butterflies and moths are the second most abundant species of insects. This is after beetles, right? They exist on all the continents except for Antarctica, and they have a very long natural history, right? There have been butterfly fossils that have dated back to like 40 million years ago. We know that they evolved with flowering plants, right? So the Cretaceous period, which was about 65 to 135 million years ago. Aesthetically, you know, you can say they're the most beautiful insects in the world, although there are some beetles that may rival them, right? But they've also been the subject for art, inspiration for art. They're cultural symbols, right? For freedom, love, and peace. Kind of something that we need to focus on now in our world. And also they're used for education as well. So, you know, their life cycle and their complete metamorphosis is used in all the classrooms. It's how children learn how butterflies change from an egg to a larvae to pupa to an adult. So it's often used as a teaching tool. And in the past, it has been used to help go over like the body parts of insects, like, you know, the 3 body parts, different amounts, you know, 6 legs, whatever, antenna. It's been used in early studies for that as well. Economically, you know, obviously for me, they're just beautiful and I love them. But if you think about it in terms of economics, they're also a source for ecotourism, like butterfly farming in places like Costa Rica. And they've also been the inspiration looking at the arrangement of their scales for solar panels, which I thought was kind of cool. And that also kind of ties into the ecosystem value as well in pollinating agricultural crops. So important for that, and also for our vegetables in our garden as well. And we also know that, you know, these poor little insects, you know, they're like the beginning of the food chain, right? They're, you know, food source for lots of predators like birds and bats and spiders and lizards and different things like that. So very important part of the food chain, and kind of like little indicators for the health of the environment as well. So that's some of the value that we place on these insects. I guess you can decide for yourself which one you value the most. I did want to talk just a little bit about butterfly gardening and how we're kind of moving beyond butterfly gardening. But that was the initial kind of fad that was out there. But there are certain things that we can still take from it. And according to like the Xerces Society, you know, they say that really pollinators only need 3 things. They need flowers, right? If you plant it, they will come. They need places, you know, for shelter and to raise their young. And they need a pesticide and herbicide-free environment. So if you do those 3 things, then you will be supporting not only butterflies, but other pollinators like native bees and other things like that. So I just stated a couple of things that you can do, but I want you to keep in mind that even though you can do a lot in your yard to help butterflies, ultimately habitat preservation is the goal, right? We need to do our part in our yards, but we also have to help protect habitats as well, because we're just not going to solve the problem within our backyards. We need to also protect land for butterflies too. But around your house, what you can do is provide areas for all of the different stages of life, from egg to larvae to pupa to adult. Get to know your local butterflies, right? And what their host plants are, what they lay their eggs on. And then also put your garden in a place that's fairly sunny, warm, protected from wind. You can add stones or bricks, or leave just bare ground for basking. And then include native plants, not only for nectar, but also for host plants as well. So in typical, butterfly gardening, people were just providing nectar plants. Now we know we need to plant those host plants, otherwise we're not going to have the adult butterflies later on. And then also you need to think about planting for continual bloom, okay? Spring through late fall. And really, we can see butterflies here year round, which is one of the great things about living here on the coast. And then leave a messy garden. So this is good for people like me that, may never get around to fixing your garden until the spring. But by leaving that plant debris, the stubble, things like that, you could help protect overwintering butterflies in their different forms, whether it's a chrysalis or larvae or whatever. And then also you can provide like a shallow pool of water with some mud in it. And they'll use that for sipping and getting minerals and nutrients and different things from that. The caterpillar in this picture, one of my favorites, is the black swallowtail. It's a fairly older larvae there. And I think it's the inspiration for Alice's Looking Glass here. It's that caterpillar, looks like that caterpillar from that show. But all of them are very unique, and I hope to show you a couple of those as well as we talk about the adult forms. So what I will say with moving beyond butterfly gardening is, if you're planting those host plants that they lay their eggs on, then you're going to get, eventually the caterpillars and then also the adults. So these are my two daughters. They're a lot older now. So probably kill me for putting these in here, but this is the monarch caterpillar here, and then you have the black swallowtail here, and another caterpillar from the black swallowtail. It's a little bit younger. And then also the spurred butterfly pea, which is a native vine that kind of grows wild. And the interesting architecture of how they, these long-tailed skippers, how they lay their eggs kind of stacked one on top of the other, which is kind of neat. Monarchs just lay them singly, underneath the leaf. And then they also have a very fascinating caterpillar that actually looks a little scary. It looks like it has eyes, and you can actually see the reproductive structures through the kind of translucent body. So again, if you have peas and different things like that that are growing wild around your yard, then you're going to be supporting these long-tailed skippers. If you have a garden, you have parsley and other things, then you would probably going to find some black swallowtails. And if you plant milkweed, then you're going to definitely have some of these milkweed or some of these monarch caterpillars. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is fall monarch migration, but also state that it's not only the monarchs, but also different species of butterflies that will migrate in the fall. We only kind of hear about that mass migration in the Midwest, but if you look at where we are in coastal Georgia here, you can see that our monarchs tend to go down into Florida, okay, and that's their typical migration. So migration season for butterflies here on the coast is from August through November. And this kind of pathway here is called the Atlantic Flyway, which is also used by birds as well. So it's a migration path for birds and also butterflies. And Coastal Wildscapes works with Barrier Island resource managers to help establish butterfly species migrating along the coast. I think this year it might be a little bit more limited with COVID, but in the past on St. Catherine's and other islands, and even inland as well, we've been monitoring the migrating butterflies. So I just wanted to briefly talk about those migratory species that we have been you know, doing counts on along the coast here. Everyone knows the monarch. It tends to fly fairly high as it moves down the barrier islands in the coast. We also have, you know, the long-tailed skippers here that are going to migrate, the cloudless sulfur, that's kind of like our largest yellow sulfur butterfly. And then also the Gulf fritillary, which probably is our most common species, and also the American lady. We'll talk about the painted lady a little bit later, but a way to identify whether it's an American painted lady or a painted lady is there's a tiny little white spot here on the orange underneath, right next to the bigger white spot here. But these are the species, particularly the monarch, the cloudless sulfur, and the Gulf fritillary. Those are the ones we have been monitoring along the coast. And a lot of Coastal Wildscapes members have been participating in that as well. So it's been really great. What I will say is that we have a little pamphlet, a brochure on that these are actually extracted from. So I'll show you that at the end, how to, you know, go and get that resource, get that that brochure. But these are the ones that are being looked at. And not only are we looking at how they're the numbers of them migrating, but also looking at what they're nectaring on along the coast so that we can, you know, provide them in our gardens to help out as well. So if you do want to see the mass migrations in the fall, this is a great time, especially like the Gulf fritillaries. If you go to, you know, the beach, the dune systems there, especially on like Jekyll, I mean, they're just like passing you by like nothing else. So it's a really cool thing to see. But also note that this cloudless sulfur here, it'll migrate north as well. So it kind of goes up and down the coast. And the resource is through BAFA, which is the Butterflies of the Atlantic Flyway Alliance. Great project, and it's really giving us some great data too. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about our first species on the coast, probably the most iconic swallowtail that we have out there. Before I talk about it, I did want to point out that up in the right-hand corner, there's a black butterfly here, a little icon. And what I did was, butterflies are usually arranged into like small, medium, and large. So I also put that up there as well. If this one's a large butterfly, if it's really large, that means that that butterfly has a wingspan greater than 4 inches. The medium is like 1.5 to 4 inches, and then a small one is less than 1.5 inches. So I kind of put that up there as a symbol, but I'll also talk about that as well. Okay, so the Palomini swallowtail, one of my favorites of the swallowtails, is just absolutely gorgeous. Here it is nectaring on thistle. I think I took this picture at Harris Neck National Wildlife Refuge, which is a great place to look for butterflies. Its caterpillar is really cute. It's supposed to look scary, right? It has like a large thorax here, and it resembles bird droppings, which you can see in this picture. And it is going to lay its eggs on the red bay, which can grow into a very large tree. However, the red bay is susceptible to red bay laurel wilt disease, which is caused by a fungus transmitted by an invasive species, the red bay ambrosia beetle. And it really affects it, kind of stunts its growth and can kill it as well. So don't see too many very, very large red bays. But here are the kind of the interesting fruits of the red bay here. So kind of a neat looking plant. So again, this swallowtail is quite large. You can see that its body, its thorax and abdomen is striped. That's another clue. Its wingspan is up to 5.5 inches. So fairly large in terms of butterflies, and very common. Also, what I forgot to mention is that on the caterpillar, its little eye spots here are meant to resemble like a snake or a lizard. So it really looks a lot bigger than it appears to be. But again, it's our most iconic species and pretty much restricted to the deep south. You're going to find it in wooded swamps, hammocks, forest edges, even a visitor to your garden. I see it a lot at my house. I live on the salt marsh. Moist woodlands and evergreen swamps. The next one of my favorites, they're all my favorites, I think, but the Buckeye, since I am from Ohio. It's just absolutely gorgeous. This one, I took this picture on St. Catherine's Island. It was on the beach, nectaring on like the beach croton, which is a really beautiful flower. That's along the dunes and also the coastline as well. The Buckeye is also in the brushfoot family, along with like monarchs and fritillaries. The plants that it's going to lay its eggs on are like toadflax, false foxglove, frog fruit, plantain, twinflower, wild petunia, which is kind of pictured here. And then here is its caterpillar, and it is on that false foxglove. So you'll see it along the roadside and things like that. But it is a resident of the coast. It has a very rapid flight, low to the ground. And it will also have a fall migration to warmer places towards the Gulf Coast over time, over the winter, or fall, I should say. The next one, this is our largest butterfly here in Georgia, and one of the largest in North America. It's the giant swallowtail. It's in the swallowtail family, along with the palamedes. And it's going to lay its eggs on Hercules club, wafer ash, prickly ash, cultivated citrus. So some of you might have citrus trees in your yard. If you do, you probably have the giant swallowtails. Also resident to gardens. I see it sometimes in my garden. But you'll find it in woodlands, pastures, forest edges, stream corridors, open pinelands, and suburban gardens. Also, the larvae resemble bird droppings as well, especially this one on the left. And they actually look kind of mean here. I think I took this picture at Altama plantation, and the plant was just covered in those caterpillars. The one thing about the giant swallowtail is it's hard to photograph because when it's nectaring, it's constantly fluttering. So that could be, an issue, but its wingspan is up to 5.5 inches as well. So very large, a resident of our coast, and just really beautiful butterfly. The next one is the Gulf fritillary. Again, probably our most common species, often confused with like a monarch or maybe the queen or a viceroy, but it's easy to tell when it's kind of has its wings up, where it has that those silvery spots on the underside of it. And I think it's sitting right here on a bud of seashore mallow, but it's going to lay its eggs on passion flower. So any of the passion flower vines. And here's the caterpillar in the middle. It's kind of creepy looking, orange with black spikes. But again, if you have passion flower, this butterfly lays its eggs all the time on it. I mean, it's just constant. You can see it ovipositing on the plant all the time. And its wingspan is going to be about 3 inches. You're going to find it in open, disturbed sites. I've seen it in like agricultural fields, parks, gardens, pretty much everywhere. It's very abundant. It was out today. I just saw it out in the garden today. It's also, again, a member of the brushfoot family. So quite abundant, and also one of our migratory species. And you'll see it, migrating in very large volumes down the coast. The next one is the variegated fritillary. It will also lay its eggs on passion flower, but another host plant is any of the violets that we have here, like the little blue violet or other ones that you'll see usually in the springtime, sometimes in the summer. But again, it prefers open sunny sites, including roadsides, pastures, old fields, and utility easements. It's also locally to, very abundant as well. It is a resident of the coast, and it has like a very low erratic flight to it. And its wingspan is a little over 2 inches in size, but fairly common here on the coast. The next one is one of my favorite butterflies to to watch fly because it is so graceful. It has a very slow, graceful flight. It's the zebra long tail or long wing. And you can see that it's quite short, but it's very, very wide. And it also lays its eggs on passion flowers, just like the Gulf fritillary. Its wingspan is 3.5 inches because of, how long it is. But its caterpillars are really cool. They're white. They resemble the Gulf fritillaries, but they have like black spots on them and the black little filaments as well. These butterflies, you're not going to see it. They're not as common. They're fairly rare. They're considered a visitor to the coast. And, its common name refers to these stripes, which help it to blend in like in the forest. So it likes to lay its eggs on Passiflora lutea, which is mostly a more shady passion flower. So hence the stripes and things like that. But I was just outside today and it was in my garden. So I was photographing it. I was all excited. It's just such a beautiful butterfly. And this is probably like its northernmost range in coastal Georgia. Another butterfly you might not see as much, only because of its habitat, is the great southern white. It's fairly rare to uncommon because it is primarily a coastal species inhabiting salt marshes. But very beautiful, like a pure white color. Here's one of its host plants here, but it will lay its eggs on Virginia peppergrass, saltwort, sea rocket, other things like that. And you're going to find it again in those open sites, coastal dunes, salt marshes, even vacant fields and agricultural land as well. Here it looks like it's on some kind of Asclepias, some kind of milkweed, and here it is on sea oxide daisy. So again, considered a visitor to the coast, but I don't know if you could see this, but the little tips of its antenna are this, these little blue tips are just really pretty on it. So it's kind of like one of the identifying features of it. And it has like a low, generally casual flight to it as well. The next one is the southern hairstreak. It's going to lay its eggs on various oaks, which we have in abundance here. And again, if you plant oaks, that's probably the one plant species that helps the most variety of caterpillars and insects. It's in the gossamer wing family, and it's a little bit smaller, right? So it's in, it's only going to have a wingspan up to 1.3. So it's one of our teeny little butterflies. This one's on Queen's Delight, and I think this one is a live oak over here, but you'll find it on woodland edges, oak scrub, adjacent open areas as well. It's considered a resident of the coast, and it has a quick, erratic flight. And the way to identify the southern is that it has this very large kind of red wedge on the wing here. So that'll kind of tell you what it is compared to some of the other hair streaks. The other one, I photographed this little guy in my garden, is the gray hair streak. It's going to have many different larval host plants like beggar weeds, milk peas, partridge pea, lupine, bush clover, vetch, which is here on the left. There's that lupine in the middle, mallow, and so on. You'll find it along open disturbed sites, fallow agricultural land, old fields, gardens. It was in my garden. And it has a wingspan a little bit larger than the southern at 1.5 inches. And it is also uses our native indigo as a host plant as well, Indigo fera. So it is considered common to our area, and it's one of the most commonly encountered hair streaks. And the really cool thing about hair streaks, if you get a chance to observe them, you can see in the back here at the end of their wings, they have these little hair-like tails on their hind wing that resemble antennae. And what they do is like swish it back and forth, and along with the spots on the back here, kind of looks like an eye, and it fools predators. It's kind of what they call their false head feature. And the predators go after the tail and leave the butterfly alone. So it's kind of a neat little defense mechanism that they have. And again, it's a resident of the coast. The next butterfly is the viceroy. I love this picture. I took it at Harris Neck National Wildlife Refuge over by Woody Pond, and it kind of looks like one of those stained glass lights. It's just absolutely beautiful. And the way you tell the viceroys, it has like this black line here, often confused with like monarchs, and they are thought to be monarch mimics, which was Batesian mimicry. They thought that, you know, the monarch tastes bad and the viceroy looks like it tastes good, but upon more investigation, they found that it's actually Müllerian mimicry, where they both taste bad. They actually did an experiment where they fed butterfly wings to birds, and they figured out that the viceroy tastes bad. So they both taste bad, but they both look like each other, so pretty much birds are going to leave it alone. So viceroys, they're a little bit wary and difficult to approach closely, and they stay very close to like wetland areas where their host plant is, which is, you know, the willow. They are a resident of the coast, and their wingspan is a little, just slightly over 3 inches. So they're kind of occasional to common here, and again, part of the brushfoot family with monarchs. And here's our monarch. I do have a couple props for this one. I have several butterfly weed in my garden, and I've had several chrysalises and also caterpillars, so I'll show you those in a minute. But again, one of our most iconic species. Pretty much everyone knows what a monarch is if they know any butterfly. And they have one of the most amazing, you know, annual fall mass migrations to rival, you know, any species on Earth. They are considered a visitor to the coast. They're just, you know, not as common as they are like in the Midwest. And their wingspan is up to 4 inches. So they're a little bit bigger than the viceroy. So that's another kind of thing. And they also have warning coloration to them, similar to the viceroy. They're orange and black, you know, they have that warning coloration, and, you know, they're saying, hey, don't eat me, or something bad's going to happen. So that's kind of like their defense. And they're going to get those toxins from the milkweed and incorporate them into their body. They also have a very strong soaring, beautiful flight, and they tend to fly pretty high, especially down the coast. So here is, hopefully you guys can see this, the little monarch caterpillar here. He's been really busy eating this milkweed. He ate the whole top off of it. And then also, I have a chrysalis too, so hopefully you'll be able to see this, but it was, the butterfly weed looks horrible because he's been eating it, or he or she has been eating it, but if you can see that chrysalis here, it's right here on the top. Very beautiful green with like the little gold jewels on it to adorn it, so really cool. It's probably going to be coming out here pretty soon in the next day or so. So they're fun to have in the garden, and it's really cool to see their transformation as they move from egg through their stages as a caterpillar to the chrysalis, and then to see them eclose or come out of their chrysalis is really, really amazing. So that's a fun one to do with children or grandchildren as well. They also are going to lay their eggs on the underside of a milkweed, and it's like a little white egg singly on the underside of a leaf. Here this one is on swamp milkweed, and then the chrysalis is hanging from red salvia. I think this was in Linda Lamb's yard when we visited it. The next species I want to talk about is the painted lady. The one that we showed in the beginning was the American lady. Very hard to tell the difference between the two. But it's lacking that little extra white spot in the orange region here when you look at the back side of it. They're going to lay their eggs on thistles and mallows. So, you know, you tend to see them in the early spring when our yellow thistles are blooming. And they have a really pretty underside as well here. So they're fairly rare, not as specific to the coast, but you'll be able to see them as well, considered a visitor. And one neat thing is that their larvae construct little individual shelters of loose webbing on their host. So we'll talk about the skipper, the long-tailed skipper, which does something similar too, which is kind of neat. Each of these species have their own little things that they do. The next one we'll look at is our smallest butterfly. So not only do we have our largest butterfly, but we have the smallest one as well. Very beautiful blue, right? The eastern pygmy blue. And it's going to lay its eggs on saltwort and glasswort. So those are the host plants for it. And you'll find these along the coast where you see, you know, typically saltworts and glassworts along the dunes and shoreline. I do have a picture of the underside of it when we get to one of the plants. So I'll show you the, I guess the belly, the ventral side as well. But because it is so teeny tiny, its wingspan is like a ½ inch to almost 1 inch. So very small, hard to follow because of that size, but it's easily identified if you get a picture of it because it has 4 silvery black spots along the ventral hind wing of the margin, which you can't see here because you're looking at like the dorsal, the back of it, but I'll show you that in another picture when we get to the sea lavender. So fairly uncommon, but locally abundant because it's very specific, resident of the coast. And it has like a low, weak flight, and it's going to flutter like erratically over the host plant too. So again, often overlooked, but you know, common where you find those species. So you can see the underside of this blue here, which shows those beautiful eye spots, these iridescent ones of the Serranus blue, which again is the very teeny tiny butterfly. Wingspan a little bit larger, up to like 1 inch. So it's going to lay its eggs on anything in Fabaceae, which is the pea family, you know, indigo, partridge pea, milk pea, things like that. And you'll find it in disturbed sites, along roadsides, open areas, vacant fields, utility easements, and so on. I think it's on Pluchia here, and then some kind of vervain, and I think Elliott's milk pea, which is a vine. But so it has a variety of host plants. Also rare to uncommon. It's considered a stray, an uncommon vagrant in our area. And it will scurry like erratically close to the ground, so it's often easily looked at as well. But it does have a kind of cool feature to it that it feeds and rests with its wings closed. And you usually notice the blue color when it's flying. I was really excited when I first saw my queen. I remember I was in Deborah Shepherd's garden at her house, and she actually let me bring home some caterpillars. So I was so excited. I got to raise them and see them transform into these beautiful queens. We don't have those up in Ohio, so I was really excited about them. They're just absolutely gorgeous with all the spots and the dark color to them as well. Again, part of the brushfoot family. They're called 4-footed butterflies because they have their last 2 legs are kind of much reduced. You can't even hardly see them. And their caterpillars greatly resemble our little monarch caterpillar who's happily munching away. Monarch caterpillars have 2 sets of filaments. And if you can see from this picture, it has 3 sets here. And it has like a different kind of pattern to it as well. But, you know, Deborah Shepherd's garden is, yard is pretty much on the salt marsh. So it's going to be, I've seen them at like Skidaway Island State Park. I've never seen one in my yard, but they're around here. You'll find them in savannas, pastures, pinelands, roadsides, old fields, coastal areas and gardens as well. And they're going to lay their eggs on milkweeds, right? Any Asclepias species like this beautiful sandhill milkweed. So they're kind of an occasional butterfly. They're considered a visitor of the coast, and they also, like the monarch, have like a slow soaring flight. But they're not, unlike the monarch, not going to do any significant migrations annually. And their wingspan is 3.5 inches, so a little bit larger. The next butterfly, I remember the first time I saw it, which was in Florida, and then I was able to also see it here on the coast on the shoreline of St. Catharines. But absolutely beautiful butterfly, very intricately detailed. Not very large, only grows to about, or the wingspan will only get to about 2.5 feet. It's going to feed on frog fruit, water hyssop. You know, frog fruit is kind of like a lawn weed, considered. In water hyssop, you'll find it in like wetland areas like Cay Creek. But it prefers open, disturbed sites, wet ditches, roadsides, pond edges, old fields, and also you'll see it in gardens as well. It's considered a stray. It only occasionally makes its way to coastal Georgia, just depends on the season. But it has a fast, erratic flight, usually within a couple feet of the ground. The next one is the cloudless sulfur. This is, again, one of our migratory species. It has a wingspan. Oh, there's an extra little butterfly in there. It has a wingspan up to like 2.8 inches. And the neat thing about these is you can see their little proboscis, their little feeding tube is quite long. And this allows them to get into like longer tubular flowers that are usually inaccessible to other species. It'll lay its eggs on members of, you know, some of the peas, like the partridge pea, which is right here, sensitive pea, siennas as well. And the caterpillar is in the middle. It's kind of hard to see. It really blends in with that leaf. But it's like green to yellowish right here in the middle. The cloudless sulfur, if you ever tried to photograph it, it's very quick, has a fast, powerful flight. And it, again, its migration has a massive southward migration into the Florida Peninsula as well. So it's a very large yellow butterfly. The next one is a little bit smaller butterfly, under 3 inches. It's called the southern pearly-eye, and it's going to lay its eggs on the giant cane or the switch cane, which is, you can see on the right here. It is maybe occasional to locally abundant. It's a resident of the coast. It's one of our largest satyrs, and it has like a quick bobbing flight. And the really cool thing about these butterflies is that they don't really visit flowers. They feed at sap flows. They feed on rotting fruit, decaying vegetation, dung. And then, unlike most other butterflies, they are often flying when it's overcast out, and they could fly until dusk. So unique but beautiful little creatures. You'll find them in very moist, shaded woodlands. One of the places you'd probably be able to spot it would be like at the Savannah-Ogeechee Canal, where there's a lot of switch cane, stream corridors, swamp margins. That's a good place to find these butterflies. The only skipper that I'm going to talk about today is the long-tailed skipper. And again, because most of them are hard to see, hard to identify, they all look alike. But this one, very easy to identify. Although this poor little guy lost his other long tail. But it has that iridescent, like teal color to it. It's very beautiful, very common. There were a lot of them out when I was outside today. It's going to lay its eggs on any legumes, beggar weeds, and wisteria. This is our native wisteria here, which is very beautiful and not invasive and much more well-behaved than like the Chinese or the Japanese wisteria. So you're going to find these butterflies in the garden, in moist shaded woodlands, stream corridors, swamp margins, and they have a wingspan like up to 2 inches. They're also a migratory species as well, moving south, and they kind of resemble a little swallowtail. But they're one of the most common and distinctive skippers here in the southeast. And their colorful larvae here are really cool, where they construct these little shelters. So if you have, like, you know, the spurred butterfly pea or other pea species kind of growing wild, the margins of your yard, if you see like a leaf like folded over and kind of sewn tight, it'll probably be the long-tailed skipper. You can open it up and see like the little caterpillar in there. And when they get really large, they can like sew, you know, a lot of different leaves together. So kind of neat in that respect. So that long-tailed skipper that'll end our talk on our coastal butterfly species. What I want to do now is kind of change the focus to some of the nectar plants that you can provide for our butterfly species in your garden. And a lot of these are readily available at our plant sales, our virtual plant sales, with our vendors and things like that. I think the only one that I have not seen at one of our plant sales is sea lavender. That might be the only one. And groundsel bush is so so common here on the coast. You'll see that sometimes around in your yard as well, especially if you live right on the salt marsh or fairly close to the coast. But these are the 10 most important autumn nectar plants that you can plant in your garden to help. And this has kind of come about thanks to the research that's been, you know, the BAFA research that's been done along the coast, looking at what plants these butterflies are nectaring on. So the first one is hammock snakeroot, the groundsel bush vanilla leaf. That one, I don't know if I've seen that one at the plant show either. Maybe. Swamp sunflower, gay feathers, which are just blazing stars, sea lavender, silkgrass, scarlet sage or azure sage, seaside goldenrod, and then also wing stem. So this little butterfly here is a American painted lady. And they're very intricately patterned and beautiful. So the first plant I want to talk about is the hammock snakeroot. This is my daughter on St. Catherine's taking a picture of it. As you can see, it can kind of take over an area, but very important plant for fall migrating species. It can grow up to like 3 foot. It's salt tolerant. You're going to find it in dry wood, full sun to part shade, and it is going not only attract butterflies, but hummingbirds as well, and is said to be deer proof. It's like a last resort for deer, I guess. The groundsel bush, this beautiful picture was taken by Krista, I'm assuming on St. Catherine's, showing you know, kind of like a resting spot for monarchs and Gulf fritillaries as they migrate down the coast. It's also called marsh elder, and it has both male and female flowers. These ones here, the little tassels, they almost resemble little paintbrushes, but they're white and showy. And these plants, it's the only member of the daisy family, the aster family, that gets to like a tree size. So they can grow up to 15 feet and can be as wide as they are tall. They like to grow in full sun. They're very fast growing. They're salt tolerant to October. So you're going to find them in salt marshes and other wet disturbed areas. Birds also use them for their seed as well. So lots of wildlife. Enjoy this plant. Next one is vanilla leaf. Given the name for when you kind of break up the leaves, it smells like vanilla. It's going to bloom from August through November. It's considered a perennial. It's in the aster family. As you can see, it kind of looks like blazing star flowers. You're going to find it in pine flatwoods, moist sand hills and bogs, in full sun to partial shade. Here's a pretty little long-tailed skipper on it. But it likes to have its feet wet. It can grow up to 4 feet tall, and part of its Latin name, the specific epithet, the species name, is Latin for most fragrant. So it kind of gives you a clue as to good for a scent garden as well. The next one is swamp sunflower. I like to say this is the plant that keeps on giving, because once you have one, you're going to have a lot of them. So if you want to colonize an area, this is a great plant for it. It spreads through underground rhizomes, readily seeds. Just getting ready to bloom now. Mine is kind of has flower buds. They're not open yet, but again, hence its common name. Likes its feet wet, wet areas, but will tolerate less as well. Prefers full sun, just like any other sunflower, but will do in part shade too, and can grow like over 6 feet tall. I mean, really huge. It's going to bloom really late summer to fall and attract also bees. This is a black swallowtail here. It is perennial, and also called narrow leaf sunflower, and it has very kind of skinny, rough leaves that kind of feel like sandpaper. So that's one way to tell it. It's also attractive to birds as well. The next one is these gay feathers, which are blazing stars, Liatris. This one is elegant blazing star. Probably one of the most beautiful ones. I think I took this picture at Altama Plantation, and it is a perennial. It's going to grow to like 4 feet. It'll attract not only butterflies but bees as well. And you find these in like prairies, pinelands, sandy areas, blooming from August through October, and can tolerate part sun, so sun to part sun. The next one is sea lavender, and remember that eastern pygmy blue I was talking about? There's those little eye spots there that tell you it's an eastern pygmy. And this is a beautiful queen over here. This plant is in the plumbago family, the leadwort family, and it's considered a salt marsh plant. I think I've only seen it at, I've seen it growing wild at Fort Pulaski, but it flowers along one side of the stem and has like a branching cluster to it, and it's going to bloom from like June through August. It can do in part shade as well, and it does like to have its feet wet, but a very beautiful salt marsh plant. Another one that I have here in my garden in the drier areas is silkgrass. So it does require fairly dry areas, very drop tolerant, cannot tolerate, you know, having its feet wet. It's a member of the daisy family, so it's not a grass. And it has like silvery leaves to it, so it's very distinctive. And it'll colonize the area around it as well. There's a cloudless sulfur on one here. It can grow in part sun to sun and grows up to 3 feet. Again, it's a perennial and very attractive to butterflies. It's going to bloom from August through November. It's blooming right now. And you'll find it in sandy areas and also disturbed areas too. The next one is azure sage, or I call it scarlet sage. It's a perennial. This is a great plant for like if you have part sun. There's a little zebra longwing nectaring on it. This plant will reseed. If you water it though a little bit more, it'll bloom a little bit better, but it only grows to like 2 feet, so fairly short. And you'll find it in open woods, forest edges, blooming from like September through November. It's just blooms continually. And also attracts bees and hummingbirds as well. Also very drought tolerant once you get it established, and thought to be deer proof. Last resort for deer. The one goldenrod, which I will say is probably the most well behaved of the goldenrods because it does not spread through rhizomes, is the seaside goldenrod. You'll see it along the edge of salt marshes like this one here at Savannah State University. It's growing with like sea oxeye daisy, and then you have cordgrass in the background. Here's a Gulf fritillary nectaring on it, but one of the most important food sources for migrating monarchs, thought to be deer proof as well. And you could prune this earlier in the season to get like a more bushy look to it. And again, it is a goldenrod. It's not a ragweed, so it doesn't cause hay fever allergies. Anything with a showy flower is there to attract insects in for pollination. It's also resistant to the salt, like salt spray. It's going to bloom from August through October and attracts not only butterflies but bees and hummingbirds as well, and prefers full sun. The next one we're going to talk about or the last one I should say, I'm going to talk about is wingstem. This is yellow wingstem, also called yellow crown beard, but there's also a white species as well, which is really beautiful. And we often have it at our plant sale too. This is a painted lady on the wingstem here. This plant grows like to 10 feet tall. I mean, it's huge and it covers large areas. There's a ton of it on St. Catherine's. You'll find it along creeks in part sun to full sun, blooming from like August through October, and also attracts bees as well. And the name comes from the leaf petioles, the leaf stems, which are winged, but a very beautiful flower and big pollinator attractor. So before I get into the iNaturalist part of this, I do want to show you a couple of resources that we have on our website. One of the resources I talked about and the other ones, and then I'm going to come back to this iNaturalist and show you how to set up an account and find the project for our iNaturalist event in October. So I will come back to that in a minute. I'm going to get out of here for a minute and go to our website just to show you a couple of resources that we have. If you go to www.coastalwildscapes.org and see the tab resources, if you click on resources here, it'll bring up this page which shows like wildlife info and plant info. So if you click on wildlife info, it'll give you a couple of resources here that are great. The Coastal Georgia Fall Migratory Butterfly Guide, and also these two coastal butterfly brochures. You have to get both of them because they cover different families of butterflies. This one looks at swallowtails and brushfoots. The other one looks at skippers and satyrs. And this one looks specifically at our fall migratory species. So I'll, let me get back here for a minute. So that's how you get to it. You just select resources, and then there'll be an option to look at wildlife info or plants. So this is what the Fall Migratory Butterfly Guide looks like. And you can download it onto your computer. And then we also have the Coastal Butterflies and Host Plants here. Excuse me. And there's the back of it. And then also the Skippers to Satyrs, Coastal Butterflies and Host Plants. And there's the back of it as well. These are really great resources because they tell you what the butterfly is, they give you the host species for it, and then they have pictures as well associated with them. And again, these are all based on, you know, the butterflies you're going to find here on the coast. So, you know, coastal specific to Georgia. Wonderful resources, you know, developed by Krista Hayes and Mike Chapman and other people as well, with St. Catherine's Island Foundation. The other resource I want to show you guys is, let me get out of here for a minute, go back to our page. If you go back to resources and go to plant info here, I just want to show you a couple of plant resources that we have online that you can download. Landscaping with native plants, invasives that you shouldn't plant in your garden or get rid of, and then our plant cell profile. So these go through a ton of different species that we have at our plant cells and, you know, their requirements for growing. And then also this fire adaptive landscaping book here, which is a wonderful resource as well. So I encourage you to look at those. And also if you go to resources and go to like our PowerPoint presentations, you can see all of our presentations and even the one from tonight as well. So I wanted to make sure I covered that. Now I want to get back to our iNaturalist event here. So let me go back up to this one just for a minute. Again, you want to make note of it, that it's the 2020 Fall Coastal Georgia Butterfly Count, and it's going to occur from October 9th through the 12th. So this is something you would do on your own, and how you can contribute to science and research by taking pictures of pollinators. So it's a really fun thing to do, and you could submit any of your photos between those dates. So what I want to show you guys is how to, you know, go to how to get onto the website. Just Google iNaturalist, and then this will come up. And I want to show you how to sign up, how to find our project, and then just some other little features of it. And I'll try to I'll upload a picture and show you a little bit how it works. So once you Google iNaturalist, this page will come up. So you're like, oh my gosh, where do I go, right? The easiest way I found was just to go down to Join Today. Click on that link. And then if you already have an account, you can log in at this point. If you don't have an account, you just put your email in, give a a username, password, define that you're not a robot, and then create your account here, agree to these terms. I already have an account, so I'm going to bypass this and get into it. So here I am, I'm going to log in. So this is, it'll just log you in when you already have an account. So this is what you see when you open up the iNaturalist. And you can add observations here, like if you just do ones, in your backyard. Here are some of my observations. here, and it kind of shows you, you know, where those occurred. But if you go back to that original page here, the way to find our project can be a little bit confusing, right? When you get in here, go to community up here at the top and projects, right? So you're going to join a project. Here it is here. And then you're going to search for it, okay? Because it's probably not the most important one going on, right? So what I put in there was like 2020 Fall Coastal. I just kind of put in the beginning of our project. But again, it's really called the 2020 Fall Coastal Georgia Butterfly Count. And then select go, and it pops up. So you just click on it. And then I had joined before, but I unjoined so I could show you. It just talks about what, you know, when it begins, what we want you looking at, butterflies and moths, pretty much anything, in the different locations, the counties, which I'm assuming all of you guys are in, or you could venture into. Shows the map too, which is kind of neat here, coastal Georgia. And what you do is just go up here where it says join, and there's already some members that have joined, so that's awesome. Say yes, I want to join. And now what you do, and there's also an app for your phone, so if you know, take pictures on your phone, you can upload it directly from there. There's a little upload here in the top right, and that's where you would upload a photo. Okay, choose a file on your computer or whatever. I'm not going to do anything on this one only because it hasn't started yet. So what I'm going to do is go back to just my page, my beginning page here. I'm going to stay in the project. But again, the way to find that project is to go to community, projects, and then search. That's the way you find it. And I'm going to go to my observations here. And I'm going to show you how to upload it and show you kind of what is involved in that. It's fairly easy. You just have to know like the date that you took it and where you took it. Sometimes it'll automatically load. Sometimes it won't if you're putting them from your computer. But if you click this little upload, choose a file. I just placed a couple on here. I know this is a black swallowtail. But this is the really cool thing about iNaturalist is that you can learn your species. So if you don't know what it is, just like click on here and it'll load suggestions. Like this is what I think it looks like. And I already know that it's a black swallowtail. So I could say black swallowtail. What is the date? I can't remember. I'm gonna have to go back and do that. But you have to put the date in and your location and then any notes you can add into there. Now, I will say if you don't have the date on there, it cannot be used for research. So the more information you can put on it, you know, the better. So it has like all the, like captive, cultivated, location is public, whatever. There's many different other things that you can add to it. So I'm going to discard this one for a minute, but I want to go in and show you one of my species here. I think it's the 8-spotted forester moth. So the cool thing about this is people can make comments on here. So like the observation date didn't come through. Someone posted, you know, can you please put the date in? That way it can be used for research. Or people will say, yes, that's the, you know, that is the butterfly that is, and they can ID it for you. So it's just a wonderful little resource. So you'll see like research grade next to it if it's, this is a pretty bad picture, but like I suggested an ID, my friend Debo said the same thing. So people can comment on it and so on and so forth. So it's a really great resource to have. So that's, it's just kind of getting used to it and figuring out if you're going to do it on your phone or if you're using your camera and you're going to download it later, you can just do it on your computer like I'm doing here. But wonderful resource, and I hope that you all will join our project and contribute to that in October. Something to do outside. You can socially distance. You can do it by yourself. So it's a super fun event. We had We had another one in the spring here. Let me see if I could find it here. The Spring Coastal Georgia event. And it also shows you like how many observations were made, how many species, who had the most observations. So there's like a little race. Most observed species was a monarch. So it's a really kind of neat little feature there. We had 22 people that were observing. So hopefully we can beat that record and get more of you guys out there observing butterflies and learning more about your natural environment. So that's pretty much all I